This is Between the Lines. Today, we dissect the road less traveled.
Hello, we continue with The Road Less Traveled, Chapter 43, The Miracle of Evolution. And we have been talking about evolution in the previous chapter and saying that evolution is this spiritual growth that we have talked about during the whole book. So when we want to, here the doctor says, become a better person, become more mature. It's another of the terms he uses. It is this process of evolution, it is this miracle, as he calls it, of evolution, the way we outgrow ourselves as individuals, and can also be applied to the collective, to all humanity. And if we think about other ways that we grow, we generally, for example, in the physical sense and in our physical bodies, we grow, but we grow and decay at the same time. Every time we grow in age, though we go through all the stages of life, we are like growing older, or in somehow we could say our bodies are decaying, are getting worse somehow, though we could have this decay at different times in our lives. It could be due to health issues. It could be sometimes if you are more healthy, you can have a better growing up. But it all it comes for us all, right? This decay. I could say decay. It's like a bad word, but yes, this degradation of life. However, at the same time, even though we have this on our physical bodies, we can have another type of growth, or this passing through the different ages in our life in a mental or spiritual aspect. We could say that we can grow out and we can level up, we can be better. Instead of decaying, we can go to, if we see it as a pyramid, we can go upwards, this pyramid. And we are going to see now how this is exemplified by the doctor. And every time we grow, in this case we are talking about spiritual growth or evolution, mental evolution, we have to fight against a natural law, which is the law of entropy, the second law of thermodynamics, mostly known because they were made by Sir Newton. And he calls that decay, or that force that's pulling us down, and we have to fight against this force, and that is called entropy. So we have to fight back in order to move forward to the next level up, or the next step up in this pyramid. And we can see, for example, if we feel, if we follow the theory of evolution, which I'm not saying is it true or untrue, but we are assuming right now for this purpose of an example that it is true. And we can see, for example, viruses, bacteria, and they're like evolving and becoming more complex in their way, escalating against entropy. So viruses are of the top-down part, as you can see here in the image that I'm going to leave here. We have viruses, and then bacteria, a little bit more complex, and they are also, we can say, more evolved, or they are more complex, and also at the same time they have higher levels of organization in the way they function. They have also they are different, and we can use the word better here for this purpose. So they are like a level up on each other, following fish, birds, and animals, and finally men. Men, women, of course, people, human beings. And if you see this, we are like fighting. This force of entropy is pointing down the pyramid. So we are fighting against entropy in order to move up to higher levels of organization and complexity. This also happens with organizations, with individuals and societies, companies, you name it. And if we translate this physical world, this physical theory of evolution into spiritual evolution, and here the doctors mentioned it as spiritual competence, we start with an undeveloped state as humanity. You can name yourself as an individual. Here is the same for one person or the whole collective. And we also have to fight against this entropy, or we have to move forward and put the effort and the will in order to take action against this entropy that's pulling us back again, in order to become a competent or grow spiritually, right? So we could compare this to, it immediately comes to mind, I don't know if you can see the resemblance also here. There, if you remember the pyramid of Maslow, of hierarchy of needs, it is also the same way. Each step from base up, upwards to the peak of the pyramid, you have to like move forward, fight against the lowest levels and grow and mature every step up to the pyramid, up to the highest level, which is self-realization. And this is also define resistance step by step, as I was saying. And I want to make like a parenthesis here before I explain the example the doctor gives, because sometimes, especially nowadays, that we see that the whole world is like in an at least strange way of a strange status that we have nowadays. The doctor mentions here that though we may feel the progress isn't really what we thought it would be, or that we my thought as humanity would be more progressed in the sense of becoming better, everyone in humanity. We are seeing right now, at the moment that I'm recording this episode in 2026, we are seeing a decay, or that entropy, we could say, is winning against our wills as humanity in order to become better. It may be due to different factors. We can spend a whole day discussing this, but I understand why the following things that I'm about to say, that the doctor mentions again 50 years ago, may seem discouraging. At least that's what I felt when I was reading this, and I felt that we are I felt disheartened. That's my truth when I was reading this, because the doctor goes back to the ages that we, in his example, from where we have evolved, and nowadays we have seemed to be in our way back to the same ages. So that is why I'm going to tell you the example now, and maybe you can relate to what I'm saying and maybe think the same, or maybe you think completely the opposite, and you can comment and see and say what it is that you think. But anyways, so the doctor comes here with an example back to the age of the Romans, where the Romans had absolute control over their children, and even they have slaves, right? And they were in absolute control of the people in charge of them. Sorry, the people that were in charge. And they pay absolutely no attention to their children. They were just like any other, in most cases, like slaves, or they would send them to war, and they would make them work beside adults. They didn't care for their education, and mostly there might have been some Romans that did not, especially in, I don't know, nobility people, those kind of people that had the resources. But in general, people didn't have nor the resources, nor the money, nor the education themselves in order to treat the children better and help them become better citizens. So we could argue, yes, of course, maybe that's what they had at the time for whatever reason. But through the ages, in the next ages, for example, in the Middle Ages, people started to pay a little bit more attention maybe to children, treating them as human beings. And so that's the way we have progressed through the years. The same happened to slaves. There was no slavery then. At first there was slavery, then they banished slavery. And in some countries, for example, women were mistreated, and then they started to being treated like human beings. Recently, actually, and like 200 years ago or 100 years ago. And that is why I say that, as I've seen in some news, in some countries, they are coming back to the stages, for example, of again having absolute control over children and women, and being able to hit them whenever they want, those kind of things. And so this evolution that we have been gaining through the years, this understanding that children should be treated as people and also should be educated and should be help, as parents, you should, or you could, at least if you are educated, be able to help your children understand that at certain ages they need to do certain activities in order to develop their mental state. That is through the ages that we have gained this knowledge and this, and we have as a collective this idea that we have to help our descendants, right? And we have to somehow become better than our ancestors, or at least try to. Anyways, I know it seems like we are moving backwards nowadays towards those first ages where we knew, apparently we didn't know all about this. But anyway, and then the doctor asks himself, he says, okay, if we know that we have to be better people and we have to become better parents, better friends, better whatever it is, better husbands, wives, partners, etc. That's a lot of responsibility, of course, and that takes effort and will, and it takes a lot of courage to do so, to go forward and to move forward and to put the energy into moving things and take action towards ourselves first, so we can grow ourselves spiritually, as we call it here, or in this miracle of evolution, and at the same time towards helping others grow. And how can we do that if we have this entropy, or this idea that it is easier for us to not do those things? As we know, our brain is like lazy. Sometimes we say he wants to protect us and it wants to keep us in our current state, and having to do something else to take action towards this change or these changes that we have to do is really painful, and it takes a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of courage and will from our part in order to take action, because our brain gets a lot of pain in doing that. And so what is this force that is against this entropy, this laziness, we could say, in our brains, that prevents us from taking this action? What is that force that we can use in order to fight this entropy? And that is what we have been talking a lot about, which is love. Because by definition, as we have talked about in chapter 15, the definition of love is, according to the doctor, is this will to extend ourselves and also, or oneself, and also nurture not only our own, but once we start this path of growing, we start also nurturing other people's spiritual growth. So love, in chapter 15, or which is called Love Defined, and also I called it here Love, Love, Love. We have talked about that definition, and that is the force that helps us move, and that helps us fuel this miracle of evolution. And this is also the way of fighting entropy, or of taking action. If we love ourselves, we will want to grow for ourselves, and then once we already are at peace, or are full of love in ourselves, we start extending that towards other people. But it has to come first from us towards the others. So to sum it up, we could say that we have on one side entropy, which is what is falling us or pulling us back in this pyramid towards growth. And we have our pulsion of growing, which is love, which helps us move forward into the peak, right? So we have to fight entropy. So entropy is a little bit less than our love. Our love should be like a little bit higher in order for us to grow. So, well, that's it. I hope I haven't discouraged you too much about the current events that are happening in the world. But I do feel that what the doctor says here, even though it's discouraging, you could say, oh, but if the world is breaking up, why should I be the one carrying this responsibility on me of having the love and the courage in order to move forward and to become a better person, or to grow spiritually or mentally, or go through this process of evolution? And again, because if you love yourself, at least you can do that, and by doing that you can also extend that love onto others. And remember that even though we are just a tiny little piece in this immense machine, we could say, that is society or the world or whatever, this could serve for everyone to move forward. It just takes, we just have to do what's in ourselves in order for us to grow, and then maybe others will follow. We don't know. That sound like some kind of cult or something like that. But wouldn't it be nice if it was just a cult of love, right? I'm not saying I'm starting anything like that, but at least I think it is a good way to think about that. Again, because otherwise it's discouraging, and you could say, fuck everyone else, I just do my own thing. But I guess that's not the idea if you are here and so far up to the last of this chapter. So I hope you have an amazing weekend, amazing week and weekend too, and see you next Sunday. Bye bye.
Stay tuned for Uluwa's next episode.